Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Astro Priestess Summit on the astrology of 2025 and beyond. And I am just so delighted to be here with beautiful visionary Sasha Rose of Venus Wisdom. And she is going to share with us about the critical message of the coming Venus and Aries cycle to help you rebuild the world and 2025. So I'm so excited about everything that Sasha is going to bring through. I have gone on journeys with Sasha on syncing with the Venus cycle, a heroine journey of opening my heart to a new level. And so I'm just always so excited anytime I get the chance to talk to Sasha. And yeah, so I'm just going to share a little bit about her and then you'll get a chance to tune into Sasha. So Sasha Rose is a seasoned intuitive astrologer, a heroine's journey guide, and a leading expert in how visionary women can sync with the Venus cycle as a heroine's journey of transformation. She's revolutionized a new way to work with the Venus cycle as a heroine's journey to reclaim our feminine power and create business that brings our heart's intelligence and solution to the changes of the ages. So her superpower is reflecting a woman's feminine brilliance back to her and helping her embody her heroine's identity so she can live from her deepest truth and create the next level of success in her business and life. Wow, Sasha, you are so inspiring. I just love your sacred mission and this life. It is so powerful. So welcome. And I want to just open up space for you to share anything about yourself that you feel inspired to share. And also the first thing that's just coming to me is what is it about Venus? What speaks to your heart about her and why she's kind of been your anchor on your astrology journey?
Yeah. So happy to be here, Jamie. So good to see you. So blessed to be a part of this collaboration. Thank you for having me weave with everyone else who's a part of this. I feel super honored. So what is it about Venus? When I think about that, it's like, what is it about the feminine? Because Venus is our feminine nature. And what is the feminine? The feminine is that inner feeling, sensing part of us that actually is the doorway into the soul. It's connected to the heart energy. And for me, the most powerful moment in my life was when I was 21 years old and I was at a rave under the stars dancing all night long. And I had this spontaneous awakening of my heart where I really connected with the frequency of love in such a profound way. And the amazing thing about that was that that didn't go away. I didn't come down the next day. I actually wasn't on anything that evening. And it lasted for about 3 months where I was in this frequency of love that was so vivid and so palpable. And it changed everything. And I knew at that moment, this is the most important thing that has had or ever will happen to you. And how do I remember this? How do I remember that frequency of that openness, that innocence, that care, that love that was very much a part of the rave scene that was burgeoning at that time? And that felt like that was an extension of the 60s revolution. My mother was in that hippie revolution, and that had a whole amazing revolutionary care and opening up of the possibility of humanity. So I really understood at the time that this was like part two of that, and that I would need to spend my life, not need to, I wanted to spend my life coming back into devotion to that and understanding that. And so I actually wanted to become a nun at that time. I wanted to renounce life and go be a nun, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how that worked. I wasn't connected to any spiritual teachings or traditions. And so I remember very strongly having that sense of just wanting every day to be in prayer, to be in devotion, and to be in this frequency of love. And so later on, a few years later, I connected with Vajrayana or Tibetan Buddhism. And in that tradition, people do become nuns. And I had a friend, and we were both in that level of devotion and just so blown away by this ancient tradition that seemed to be pointing to this experience that that I had. And she did decide to go be a nun, a priestess. That's a priestess. She took that path and she didn't marry and she didn't have children. And she went and she studied with like the most wise Tibetan Buddhist teachers. That was her life. And she got ordained and she went on that path. And I didn't. I went on the path of the householder. I went on the path of becoming married, birthing a child. And that's more of the Empress path. And I really remember that choice point. We were at a retreat down in Brazil with a very powerful teacher. And just knowing that that was the path for me. And that is the Empress energy, fertile energy that does engage in that relational, that is in the day to day. I think that's a big part of who I am. And it happens to be that my numerology through my birth date, when you take those numbers and you go into the code, I'm 3, the Empress. I feel I've had many lives as a priestess where I was with my sisters, my sacred sisters in retreat. But this life was about the householder. And this life was about the mother love. The second awakening happened when I birthed my daughter. And I got to actually experience that next level of being in that frequency of love and bringing through a life through my body. Wow.
Oh, that's so powerful. And what's just like really coming through to me, wanting to ask you is any thoughts you have? You just kind of spoke to some of the thoughts of the difference of like the priestess versus the empress. And then how can we embody like more of that empress, like archetypal energy in our lives and like relate, and how does that relate to Venus as well?
So Venus is connected to that Empress archetype, and the priestess energy is number 2, and that's connected to the moon. We have this really interesting phenomena that happens. I didn't learn anything about Venus in her cycle with the sun until 2012. And in that cycle, every month she meets up with the moon. So every month we have this opportunity to connect these 2 parts of our feminine, one that feels like it's encoding our history. And I think a lot of us have memories of being in sacred service, being priestesses, living together. That's one of the reasons this reality feels so strange. This whole mechanical, corporatized culture that we live in is like, this is not right.
Virgo South Node. Like I know, yeah, this resonates.
Yeah. So there's something about we're reweaving that story of the matrilineal lineages. And so when Venus and the moon comes together, it feels like it's giving us insight to weave together these different parts and to really orient to this mother creation energy of Venus or the Empress energies or whatever you want to call it. These are just maps. These are just words. They're giving us a hint of something and then we can just drop them and we don't need them so much, but they're helpful.
I love that. Something that really drew me to your work in 2020. I first connected with you when you were a guide on Astrology Hub. And I heard you share, or really more received the wisdom of you sharing about Venus. And I was just like leaning in. I was so drawn to what you were sharing, and I could not get enough. For me, you have the exact like medicine that I need in this time. And one of the things that you often share that so deeply resonates for me, as this feels like truth in my body and my being, is that, Venus is the golden key to the age of Aquarius. And so I know that you kind of started there on your slides. And so I wanted to just like invite you to share more on that, because I just feel such a deep body yes when I hear you say that.
Yeah. So I love working with images because they transmit a whole other level of the energetic. And so, yes, I had this knowing that Venus is the golden key as we move into this age of Aquarius. If we're going to talk about a golden time where humanity is actually in a frequency of care and innovating, how do we get all of our human needs met, and how do we live in harmony with nature, and how do we have peace on earth, and how do we actually have a renaissance in our artistic abilities, in what we can create together, what we can build, is really important to be centered in this principle of the heart, of Venus, of love, of care in the relational. Because if we don't have that at center, then what we're going to create is not going to be connected to the visceral embodied experience of caring for each other, of kindness. And AI can do a lot of things, and people are really excited to use that technology, but it can't do this. It doesn't have this. And so that's why it's potentially dangerous, is because it doesn't have codes to keep it operating in care. If that was the case, we wouldn't have no problems with AI. I've been working with this feminine principle, and how do we connect with that within ourselves? That's really the beginning of the journey. And then how do we find our gifts, and then how do we share them in service and start to collaborate and build the networks? That's the second part of the journey. In this cycle that we've just had, we're in the middle of this golden cycle of the Leo cycle. It became so clear that that word feminine, when I replace it with mother, it changes everything. The feminine is mother. That's the creation principle. And that's how we rebirth the world, is through that mother principle, regardless if we're biological mothers or not. Everyone can tune into that frequency through their own heart, through their own ability to love. And I don't know that everyone can, but those who can. At this point, I don't know that everyone has that capacity. I think there's a lot of people here that perhaps don't. And so those of us who can are even more precious in that way, and even more important that we create networks. And so there's really this sense of centering on this relational in order to build what we want to build here. So I do have quite a few slides, so maybe I'll just move through them, and then you can just pipe in with thoughts or questions. And I was inspired, and all of this flowed through to share with you very organically.
I love this. And I feel such a deep resonance in my body when you're sharing about bringing the mother back into the feminine, and like that the mother, yeah, that shifting of the mother as the feminine. The mother's been so, we see the attack on the mother as well in our modern world, even how there's been some effort to remove the word as mother. And I got so into all of this because I became a mother, a biological mother over the last year and a half. And I got so into studying about birthing and so much when I was pregnant. And I just saw like this agenda where it's like the word mother was even derogatory at times, where it's like, take that out. And I just feel such a sacred rage about that when I would see this, like even like attack on the mother archetype in that way.
Yeah, I mean, that is the plan. If you're going to take down humanity, you eliminate the mother, but the mother's rising, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
But they
totally.
want to do that, and they La Leche League just eliminated the word mother from their resource. So the past resources said the motherly art of breastfeeding, and this current version has taken out the word mother. So yeah, they're trying, but as we rise and as we embody this frequency, we're going to become so strong that we'll be unstoppable.
I love this. Yes.
So the age of Aquarius, how's it going to be? This picture says a lot. What's happening for that child? Where is the presence of his parent? And I could show other pictures from the same artist with the children on the tech. And that's something that has completely changed the trajectory of childhood. They got exposed to tech before they were developmentally ready for any of that. And so we're going to need to tend to that. That relational, you can see, is completely missing. So the age of Aquarius has a positive timeline and a negative timeline. And we need to look at the negative timeline in order to create the positive timeline. We need to be sober to that. That is this initiation into the underworld and this rebirth into greater wisdom that is a part of the Venus cycle. We're all being called to do that.
It's
Yes,
such
I
a
got
powerful
it.
image. And
Yeah.
it was making me think of it was actually in a summit that you co-created with Emily Trinkus, who's also one of our speakers here, the Aquarian High Council Summit. And it was someone who spoke right before me, and I can't remember who it was, but she's like speaking about how it's like the phone is like really like representing like that ring and the Lord of the Rings. And I so see it like when my baby, who's just almost a year and a half, I pretty much, for the most part, I keep my phone like out of sight, like on do not disturb and out of the room or like in a drawer most of the day. And the few times like I have it out, it's like this such an intense magnetism
Yeah.
towards it that from birth, like that kind of energy. And I do my best to just keep it out of sight most of the day. But like wow, it feels so true.
Yeah, it's deep. We're going to return to that key point, and I love that reminder about it being like Gollum in the ring, because
Yeah.
you see these young people with phones, and that's how they are. They are so addicted to their technology. They panic if they're not going to have Wi-Fi for 2 hours. They don't know how to be with their own mind, and this is a tragedy. And it's something that we, as a collective, will need to address together. Well, I thought bringing up this hard part, I would read one of my favorite poems. It feels like it points to the actual experience of our heart, our own unique frequency of care, because we have to be resourced to see these things and to see the difficulty and to be those heroines of this time. And so I'd love to read that poem and invite everyone to drop in. This is from the Radiant Sutra by Lauren Roche, the translator of that ancient text. The one who is at play everywhere says, there is a space in the heart where everything meets. Come here if you want to find me. Mind, senses, soul, eternity, all are here. Are you here? Enter the bowl of vastness that is the heart. Listen to the bowl that is always resonating. Give yourself to it with total abandon. Quiet ecstasy is here, and a steady regal sense of resting in the perfect spot. You who are the embodiment of blessing. Once you know the way, the nature of attention will call you to return. Again and again, answer that call and be saturated with knowing I belong here. I am home. So this is one of the best experiences of a heroine's journey. We're coming home to our heart. It's that simple. Again and again and again. And you can feel that, right? That like spot, it kind of lights up when we speak to it. And so this is part of our practice, is coming into our center, coming into our core, coming into our heart, core in French, and allowing ourselves to receive the wisdom that's always there when we return home. So Venus has cycles just like the moon. And this is an image of her over her entire 19-month cycle. And she actually changes shape and has these crescents. So this is a really interesting image. I love to share that so we can begin to think of her not just as the static point in the sky, but as this dance with the sun, this 19-month dance. And this invitation into our heroine's journey of birth, of death, of rebirth, of beginning, initiation, service, of being willing to go deeper into who we are, discover more of who we are, and show up in more powerful service to the world again and again and again. And to create that spiral of healing within our own being, because we have all been traumatized in this dominator culture. And so we get to nourish our own inner child self in that deep place, and we get to mature. And through that maturation, we become the leaders that can be trusted as we are moving through this time of the greatest change that anyone alive has ever seen, beyond the imagination. And we're just getting started here. 2025 is going to be off the charts, as I'm sure a lot of your astrologers will be talking about. So that resource, it's right there in our body. It's available anytime. And some of my favorite tools to find it is just to slow down, to pause, to allow ourselves to thaw. That's the word that came to me last night, because all of the tension and all of the contraction and all of the trauma, it's like that thawing quality. And it's right there. The heat of our heart, the flame within, that eternal flame. And I think it's very important that the priestesses were tending to the eternal flame. That eternal flame is a symbol of the eternal mother, the flame that never dies, the flame that never goes out. And so, that flame that was tended to became the torch for the Olympics. It's really woven into our culture. And so we can tend to that inner flame when we come from that place of heart and come from that place of care. We actually embody that care when we're with others. So when Venus meets the sun, as she does every 19 months, she makes these points in the sky And she does this over 8 years and creates a pentagram. And so this is an important part of this rhythm and what the Venus cycle is inviting us into, and how that spiral healing, that way that we come back to these same points again and again, because these points will land in the same place in our astrology chart. Every 4 years we get to come back, we get to revisit. Every 8 years we get to come back, we get to revisit. So there's this weaving that happens. And so right now we're in the process of ending the Leo cycle, the Venus and Leo cycle, where Venus and the Sun met closest to the Earth on August 13th in the sign of Leo. And it's actually not 0 degree. It's an error. It's actually 20 degrees of Leo. And we're moving from that cycle to the Aries cycle on March 22nd of 2025. And that's at 2 degrees. And so these are both fire. So the sign that Venus and the Sun meet in at the beginning of the cycle, it's the invitation into those mysteries. It's the invitation into that book, that Venus cycle book, that heroine's journey. And so this creates a rhythm, and it's like the heartbeat, the cosmic heartbeat is what one of my teachers, Ariel Gutman, calls it. And I love that. It's, again, connecting us to the heart, to the body. And speaking of Ariel, this is her beautiful, beautiful poem. And it speaks to how Venus in the sky, we get to reach out and receive those blessings. Venus is the wishing star. We get to go and be in presence and have a ceremony where we feel and say and speak and sing our wildest heart wishes. And we're standing on the earth, we're grounded there. And we are connected through our crown and through our heart and through our earthing. So this is a really beautiful invocation that's in her book, Venus Star Rising. If somebody wants to geek out on these Venus star points, she's a pioneer in bringing the power of Venus into the astrological community, because the Venus stars play out over 100 years. So when we look at the cycles, not just where Venus is right now in the sky, but this larger dance with the sun, we really are looking at an influence that is more like Pluto. It's got that long time effect. And so this is very important, because we tend to give Pluto and, the outer planets, they're more the heavyweights. And we tend to think about Venus as more of like, oh, romance and, roses and lipstick. And of course that stuff's all fun, but it's really this deep power of our heart that is being activated. And depending on your Venus, you might not like lipstick, and, you might like leather and motorcycles. That's the fun thing. We have these really unique expressions of our feminine. In our culture, we're told you have to be in this box to be beautiful, to be desirable, to be attractive. You have to look like this. But we have this whole spectrum. And when we know our own Venus design, we get to tune into our exact frequency of who we are. And that's when we really get our inner beauty shining. I love to honor her as a pioneer in that, and to speak to the power of the Venus over the long term, because that also connects to what I'm going to say a little bit about the Demeter and Persephone myth. And in that myth, this mother archetype of Demeter, she actually negotiates with Pluto, Hades, in the underworld, and she actually wins that negotiation. And so I think that myth, which I'll talk a little bit more about, it speaks to this greater influence that Venus has that is very, very powerful, the power of the. And then we have a star in our body. And I found this image for the Vitruvian woman. Felt right to have a woman be in this position for the Venus star. But yes, we are stars. We are star beings. And every single cycle that opens invites us on a new journey, invites us to start again, invites us to begin anew, and to return to a state of openness, beginner's mind, beginner's heart, and to step into the unknown. And it's most exciting because this upcoming cycle that's coming, March 22nd, is actually the first sign of the zodiac. Aries. So that beginning again is actually correlated when the sun is going to be opening up the new year seasonally. It's the equinox. And Venus is going to have this position in the first sign of Aries. So it feels especially amplified, but this is always the case every 19 years.
Oh, so powerful. And do you feel, Sasha, like particularly with this Aries cycle that's starting, it's like in the equinox energy. And then it's also, I mean, I've like tuned in some to it, but there's so much kind of enthusiasm in the astrology world. I'm like gonna not say his name right, but Bibu, I cannot remember his last name at the moment, speaking about this kind of equinox also
Mhm.
corresponding an idea that it might correspond with like the ending of the Kali Yuga. And like I can't help but also notice that there's this new Venus cycle starting right in that energy too.
Yes. So that's why I titled this title, The Critical Message You Need to Know About the Venus and Aries Cycle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So syncing with Venus is the golden key to the age of Aquarius. The golden age is starting, folks. It's time. So she's showing us, right? The sky story is mirroring this for us and showing us front and center how important the next cycle is. And I think they're just a few days apart. I think Bibu Dev Misra is saying the Kali Yuga starts on March 25th and the Venus cycle is starting on March 22nd, 2025. So this is a very big deal for this new journey, is truly, truly an absolute new frequency that we can bring to us.
Wow. And I love that like so that even that March 25th date, it's kind of like in that space between where like the new Venus cycle has been seeded and then Venus rising as morning star. Because I think isn't it about like 7 days after she meets with the sun that she rises as morning star? And it's like right in that like middle of that like space between. I don't know if there's anything significant to that, but I was just wow.
Well, you know what I found, I discovered is that
Yeah.
Gemini Brett was sharing about this cycle, and Venus is not going to ever be invisible. In
Wow.
some places, she's not going to have an invisibility closest to the earth. Like in some places on the earth, you'll be able to see her one night as evening star and the next morning as
Wow.
morning star. And I think that's significant. So that's another indicator that this is a very important time for us
Wow.
to be leading from our hearts and to understand this feminine principle of care, not just understand it with our heads, but actually to live it. So
Mm.
this is a map of the current cycle that we're in, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. If you receive my gift that I've offered here, you'll receive that, and I will be creating a new one for the next cycle. So we can see here that we go all the way to March 22nd of 2025. And the most important thing that I wanted to mention here is just to have the visual of we're on the earth here. Here's the earth. And Venus is closest to the sun when she starts the cycle. And then she emerges as that morning star and she's out of the gate. There's all the astrological markers here where she's out of the gate. She's visible, and then she's turning around from being retrograde, and then she's brightest, and then she's the greatest distance from the sun. So there's these certain points in the cycle that's really good to know what the energetic is, so you can time your business, you can time your creative projects. This is a big launching kind of energy, like launching from your heart,
Mm.
bringing something forth new into the world, rebirthing. We are rebirthing the world. We are creating the golden age. What is your role in that? And so this is one of the reasons, knowing the energetics. This is for the last cycle, but there's going to be new dates coming out for the new cycle. And then these dates, this is all the morning star. And the morning star journey is a journey of discovering, who am I? Who am I in my truest self when I'm not in the conditioning of my parents and the culture? So the morning star, we have the opportunity to let go of the history that is no longer true, let go of our identity. And this is why I love working with midlife women, because we're mostly in a crisis anyways in menopause, because so much is going on. There's an identity crisis, because like, who am I now as a midlife woman? Because I don't have the same, I don't have the same body that I used to have. And that body is what this culture says is the most important. This picture of beauty. Who am I now as my whole experience of my attractiveness changes and evolves? So there's really that morning star is about that deepening into self and understanding our own unique qualities. And then the underworld time is the deepening into the initiation and deepening into that sense of innocence and reclaiming our connection with the mother within. And such an profound time to plan to have that time to be with oneself and to nourish that quality within oneself of retreating, but in the best way, like retreating in a way that you're really able to have some deep inner time. And then the evening star, which now we're in the evening star, we're finishing up the evening star, is whatever we learned in that underworld time and that initiation, we are more brave, we're more courageous to be who we are, to say what we really need to say. We lose our voice as women in this culture. We lose our voice as girls in this culture. We are deconstructed in speaking our truth and being who we are. And so we go into the underworld to reclaim that, to commune with that. And then from that wisdom, we re-arise. We re-arise and we're more coherent in who we are. We're more willing to use our voice. We're more understanding the clarity of who we're here to serve and what we're here to serve. What is our purpose? And so it's that birth, death, rebirth, beginning, initiation, service. It's happening over and over. The invitation just keeps coming, keeps coming. And we can say yes, we can say yes, and then we can join together. So we become many, many, many nodes of that frequency of care across the world. We're creating this network. But we have a few more dates here. We have February 1st of 2025. We're going to have our second new Venus portal where the moon and Venus will meet in Pisces at the end of Pisces. And we just passed the January 3rd portal where Venus and the moon met in Pisces. So we get two because Venus is going retrograde. And we're going to have this interesting back and forth in this transition time between Pisces, which is the last sign, and Aries, which is the first sign. She will retrograde back into Aries, and then the new cycle will start in Aries. And then in the next cycle, we're going to really have this opportunity to steep in the Piscean waters before birthing that fire of the. And so watch these dates. Then there'll be March 1st that she'll meet in Aries and have that moon and Venus visual in the sky that's going to be stunning. And we're going to obviously have the March 22nd date when she meets the sun is like the big date. But every month you can go out and have this experience in the West after sunset and watch Venus and the moon and drop in, feet on earth, heart open, breath deepening, slowing down to feel oneself and to connect with whatever that wisdom is. It is an amplification. And I've heard time and time again that those who sync with Venus begin to have more synchronicities, begin to have more clarity come through, see signs, meet people in the right place in the right time. You are syncing with a harmonic here that is the heartbeat of the whole cosmos and includes everything. That's the nature of the mother. She includes everything.
I can attest that's true from my experience. Yeah, I mean, even I think Sasha, my baby was because the Venus meets the sun, between the Earth and sun, and then on the far side of the Earth and sun. This happens about, every 9 months, again and again. And I conceived my baby right when Venus was on the far side of the sun, meeting the sun, and my baby was born literally like within a day of when Venus was between the Earth and Sun. So starting that Leo Venus cycle, I was about 2 hours before the exact Venus Sun conjunction of this Venus Leo cycle, my water broke, and that's what really like started the birthing process. But yeah, I feel like part of this is because syncing with the Venus cycle has been so become so essential to my being and like my nature that even my baby was conceived and birthed with the Venus cycle.
I love that, Jamie. I love
Yeah.
that so much. And it resonates with your Leo energy as well.
Yeah.
It's like you're literally rebirthing the new paradigm through the way that you're mothering your child
Mm.
and that motherly love. I'm so happy for you. Just
Oh,
congratulations. I'm
thank you.
so
And
blessed,
it's
delighted.
amazing. Like right now, Venus is so high, so bright, right as we're recording this. I mean, we're so close to like her maximum elongation as the evening star. And I mean, even my baby, because I try to go out. I mean, it's where we're at in Oregon, it's like so foggy so much of the time. But when it is bright, like last night, the sky was clear and it was just like, I try to go out and bring him out to see Venus, and he is just like so mesmerized by her. I mean, he'll just gaze right at her. And I mean, she's just like, he's like receiving her light. And it's like there's just like this connection there that I can feel. I mean, it's amazing.
I love that. I took my daughter out for her whole growing up and showed her
Yeah.
Venus. It's such an amazing thing to do with children, and it's so magical. Starlight, star bright, first star that I see tonight. Wish I may, wish I might, have the wish I wish tonight. That song is about Venus. She's the wishing star. And there's this idea of this dream tree, that these wishes of the heart, when they're pure, when we absolutely embody them, they will blossom. It's natural law. And so it's like those wishes that are really connected to that sense of care and humility and authenticity, that have to do with not only our well-being but the well-being of those that we love. Like, it's such a beautiful time to go out. And I used to say, I actually have been going through um, video footage of my daughter who's 19, and she's leaving home and leaving for this big trip, and getting to remember that time when she was younger, when she had her voice. She was singing and dancing, and she didn't care what anyone thought. There wasn't that self-consciousness right before adolescence. She was totally in her unique expression.
Mm.
And so I had some video footage of the birthday parties, and saying that, with all the children, it's like, oh, let's hold that wish in our heart. What are we wishing for? Anything is possible. What does our heart wish for? And it was so beautiful to hear, both that reflection of me as a mother and remembering that time when I was so close to my daughter in that particular way. That middle childhood is such an incredible time, because at that time, the children are still very oriented to mother. They haven't yet been pulled into pure energy. So there's a lot of love and a lot of mentoring that happens during that time. And their intelligence is just really coming on strong as far as like who they're going to be and what they're interested in. So it's such a potent time. And
Mm.
I think it's really important to bring children out into this relationship with the sky and into the sense of possibility. You are a creator.
I love this. Yes.
Haven't seen her. She already is looking like this dripping jewel in the sky. She's so beautiful. And now she's in the sign of Pisces, and she's exalted in Pisces. This is the last sign. This is the great compassion. And so when we look at the water, so Pisces is changeable water, we can see there's a sequence in the water sign. So that first sign of water is cardinal water, is Cancer, is mother. It's that nurturing, it's that connecting, it's that bonding, it's that loving, it's that way that we love, and then the way that we're shaped by how our parents loved us. And sadly, many of us were not loved in the way that we needed to be loved as children. So many of us have to heal those wounds from the inside. And the good news is that the power of our awakened heart can heal all of that. We can supply our own love from within that our inner child needs. So that love of Cancer. And then the next side is Scorpio. And Scorpio is fixed water, right? It's stabilizing water. And that's when things get deep. That's when you go to the next level, when you give up part of who you are to merge into an intimacy into sexuality, into very deep partnerships with money involved, into this like, okay, we're co-creating now. And oftentimes in those relationships, there is harm that is done. There is disconnect. There's ouch. There's like, I trusted you and you betrayed me. It's so vulnerable to trust another being, to center your, to give your heart fully to someone. And we've all been hurt. And so that's where Scorpio has the energy of betrayal or holding on to grudges, or like, ouch, I don't know if I'm going to love again. That really betrayed my trust in the deep of the waters. And then we have Pisces comes next. That's the mutable, changeable water. And it's like, forgive, make repair, make repair, let it go. Don't carry that forward. But don't have idiot compassion. Don't give people who've hurt you, especially who are parasitic, who are takers, don't give them love. They don't need love because you're feeding them still. You know, that you can make that boundary. I think we're really confused about compassion. And I love that. I love that term idiot compassion that they use in Buddhism. If you know it's a snake, don't be surprised when it bites you. You know, so once you see it's a snake, go, okay, I'm not giving you any more of my energy. And certainly I'm not giving you my love. Good luck to you. Doesn't mean I have to be angry at you or wishing you harm, but I'm done. And so when we call back that energy and we begin to share that energy with those who also are embodying care, the frequency of care, then we're really fortifying the way that we can move together. So in that Piscean energy, we have so much beauty of forgiveness, and most especially forgiving ourselves for the way that we've hurt ourselves, for the way that we've hurt others, for the way that we missed opportunities because of our limitations or we didn't see it. And we made our suffering more. So it's a beautiful, beautiful time for allowing the feelings to move through. Water is the feeling realm. Allow the grief to move through. Allow it to let go so we can really prepare for this new beginning. What's happening here when she reaches this point, it's like, oh, I'm going back to source. So this is the union with source. And in this particular cycle, the way that I started calibrating this map was that this was the mother, the sun as mother, the Venus as the daughter in that union, in that beautiful bonding that happens. And then as Venus is that bright young girl, that maiden, then, you know, she differentiates when she's the furthest from the sun. She's leaving home, which my daughter's doing right now. That's the empty nest. It's like, I'm going on my own adventure. And then she's got to go through her trials and tribulations and find herself and discover that she has mother within. The mother's always within. She loves her mother, but she has the mother within always. And then she can show up and be that mother in her world. She can share that mother energy, first with herself, but then with others, and be of service. And so by the time she comes to this part of the cycle, she's going back home because a new union is coming. So there's a real homecoming energy that happens for me at this greatest elongation. It's been a deep fucking journey. Excuse my language. It's okay. It's okay that I swore. My goodness, 2024 kicked. I don't know anyone whose ass was not kicked. And we're going home, we're going back to a starting point, a restart, and the kind of reset that we want to create as people who care, as people who are devoted to the protection of innocence, not the reset that they're planning. So that's the greatest elongation. And then the brightest happens at the February 17th, right after Valentine's Day. So that's a great day to go out and be in those wishes, check out Venus. And then she'll set on the 19th of March, maybe, depends on where you are. So those are just some dates to keep in mind.
I love this. This map is just such an amazing template to have, how to tune into all these power dates. So thank you so much for making that.
You're so welcome. I'm not going to go too much into this, but this is really inspired by this new understanding of Venus and the sun and this mother daughter theme, and how that connects with the heroine's journey. Because when we look at the feminine as the mother principle, it changes everything. And so, how did we in our own heroine's journey and continue in our heroine's journey? How did we get born as this unique, pure spirit that's singing and dancing and just look at any child who hasn't been severely traumatized. And then where is the loss there that happens? And how do we go on this quest to reclaim ourselves? And I love this. And the outer ring here is Maureen Murdoch's template for the heroine's journey, which she studied with Joseph Campbell. And she created this as an alternative to the hero's journey, because the hero's journey is an external journey. That's the hero that's embarking on an external journey. That's the Mars energy that is going out into the world. It's outer. Mars is outer and Venus is inner. So this is an inner journey of the feminine. And so that's her map, which if you Google Maureen Murdoch heroine's journey, you'll get these different points in the cycle, what she's seeing as the journey. And then the inner points here, they match with the map that I just showed you. They're the major markers of the Venus cycle. And it's everything we've been talking about as far as like what we're invited to do. So when you have that map with you and you go, oh, we're at this part of the cycle, we're about to birth a new, unique, pure feminine spirit connected to the eternal mother in Aries. What is that about? What is Aries about? How do we reclaim birth as joy instead of pain? That's what the old paradigm sold us, and the whole fall of man and the whole punishment was like, you will have pain in childbirth. How do we reclaim birth as joy? How do we reclaim the energy of Mars as protection of innocence instead of war, as life force instead of violence? So we have such an opportunity here to be in the total reset, 0 point potentiality of this new cycle together. And I think so many are feeling it.
Oh, and that just reminds me, when I was pregnant, I read a book called Orgasmic Birth, which just totally reoriented my mind to like what could be possible in the experience of birthing.
I love that.
And I didn't have that experience, but it was so
Yeah.
mind-opening to, um, yeah, like reconceptualize and expand my mind based past the conditioning of what we've been conditioned.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something that my mother always told me, is that her birth was orgasmic. And that kind of rearranged my world. She was part of that Aquarian 60s generation of that flowers in your hair and um, birthing at home. And she wasn't birthing at home, but that whole movement back to what's natural, back to what's truly human. And so, yeah, I think planting those seeds is really important. And many, many women have more and more have C-sections, which really interrupts that experience of birthing. And not to say sometimes that's not necessary. I had an emergency C-section. In hindsight, I'm not sure it was necessary. I'm not sure. It's like I have questions about that. But it's a very deep thing to interrupt what happens in birth. And I'm so excited to see that there's not only home birthing, but now we're seeing free birthing, where women are actually taking care of their experience. Not that they're not supported, but they're really the agent, right? That's Venus and Aries cycle, right? I'm
Yeah.
birthing my baby. I'm actually pulling out my own baby, or not pulling out, but facilitating, guiding, my own baby to come out of my own body. That's a next level of self-empowerment. For the first part of when I was working with Venus, I worked with the descent of Inanna as the main myth. And that Inanna comes out of Sumeria, and it's very much connected to the Venus cycle. If you look at that myth and what Inanna is inspired to go into the underworld and visit her dark sister. So there's really these two characters. There's topside Inanna and there's underworld Ereshkigal. And Inanna's going down and she's going to visit Ereshkigal and she's taking off these layers. And this is a lot of how people are working with Venus. that is the most ancient story that we have. And I have worked with that story. And this is when people talk about the gates. And I think a lot of people probably here are working with the gates and looking at the chakras and all of this. And um, my next evolution is to work with the Venus cycle with Demeter and Persephone, and to look at that mother daughter, because they also mirror the Venus cycle. And I think that there's something to that story that's really important. And I also want to make a disclaimer that I feel a bit passionate about. All of these myths are extremely violent and aggressive against the feminine. The Greeks, the Romans, the Sumerians. So I don't hold these as the new templates. I hold them to decode what is the wisdom here from a corrupt system, from a distorted system, from a distorted culture. So I don't elevate them. I don't look to reenact them, but I'm like a code breaker in them. And the story, the myth of Demeter and Persephone was the template for the Eleusinian mysteries. And anyone who is anyone in that period in Greece was initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries. And they had this whole process. They walked from the ocean and they made offerings, and it was this whole pilgrimage. It was a very, very big deal, and it went on for a long time. It was central. There's a really amazing book about it. It has this theory that they were taking psilocybin mushrooms as part of this Eleusinian mystery. We know that culture was really shaped by that myth, because when they went and arrived at Eleusinia, or I don't know if I'm saying that right, the idea is that they went down and under, and they basically danced and kind of raved all night long. But I don't know exactly what that looked like. And it is possible that there was harmful things done to children in those rituals. At this point, I'm really questioning all these occult traditions. I have my ear to it, because they did tell the story of Demeter and Persephone in that ceremony. That was a part of it. So they're imbibing in plant medicine, and they're reenacting the story of Demeter and Persephone. Aries, or Demeter, that's the earth. And then Persephone, Kore, or Proserpina is Venus, earth and Venus. And so the story is, I mean, the short version of the story is that Demeter, or Ceres, is the mother of life. And the word Demeter actually means earth or land, and Ceres actually means to grow or to cultivate. So she was the goddess of the grain, of the harvest, of everything that grew. And her young, innocent daughter, Maiden, who's Persephone for the Greeks, and then for the Roman, Persephone Kore for the Greeks, and then for the Roman changes to Proserpina. Um, she's the innocent maiden. She's the offspring of the mother of the earth. And it's very, very interesting, because Persephone means to destroy. And Kore means actually to destroy, or to murder. And there's actually the word phone in that definition, the etymology of the word Persephone and Kore. And so it's to destroy, to murder, and then Kore is voice or light, or the daughter maiden, like all of these words together of Persephone, Kore, Proserpina. So to destroy or murder the daughter's voice and light with a phone.
Wow.
You could put that together. And so what is the myth? The myth is that Persephone, Kore, Proserpina is out in the field. She's innocent. And what does she do? She sees a flower, a narcissus flower, and she's so enchanted, and it smells so good, and she gets so distracted. She is kind of like the ring again. What is that flower? Look at these young ones with phones. They're taking selfies. They're caught in the spirit of narcissism. It's like every move, I mean, my goodness, right? So they're enraptured by the spirit of narcissism, and she picks the flower. She chooses that. And at that moment, Hades rises up from a crack in the earth and abducts her and rapes her and violates her and takes her down into the underworld. So how has Gen Z been taken down into the underworld? Through their phones, through, seeing pornography when they were 8 years old. through seeing violence that they should never see as a child, through this material that they got access to that absolutely took them into the underworld. So I think this is very important, because if we're going to rebirth the world, we're going to need to tend to what we did to our children. We're going to need to find our Persephone in the underworld.
Yeah, and I will say I used to work in the elementary school as a school psychologist, and I was completely shocked what I would discover that first graders, second graders somehow got access to on a phone or an iPad through their own or a family member, or it was completely disturbing and shocking to me, realizing how prevalent it is that these such young children are getting access to see things that they should never see. I mean, I think still like so many people have no idea what people so children so young are getting access to that is so disturbing and so harmful to the psyche.
Yeah. Well, it destroys their innocence.
Yeah.
It takes their innocence away from them. And in that process of watching my daughter and taking these videos, I wasn't tuned in. Like, there's all kinds of videos of her when she's probably 8 or 9 with her on my phone, like, talking to herself. And she's starting to see the spirit of the narcissist. She's starting to lean into it, and she's kind of starting to pose and, be older than she is developmentally. And I see the ways I didn't protect her, and that hurts my heart. I didn't protect her innocence. I didn't keep her from that. And so that started to entrain upon her system. That started to shape her before I was conscious of what was going on. So, how do we protect the innocence of our children? It needs to be at the center of a golden age. If we're not talking about that, then I don't think we're having the right conversation. I
Oh,
don't think we're,
100%.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I don't think we're going to come up with the right solutions because we're so distracted. There's a million directions we can go, but that's the most important. So here's a famous painting of the abduction of Persephone. So it's not pretty. I mean, it's violent, and yet it's been eroticized. There's even romance novels, and Persephone is the queen of the underworld, and she has this hot relationship with Hades. So it's really normalizing sexual trauma. It's really normalizing rape, which most young women will be raped. I think, I don't know the statistics, 1 out of 3 or something like that, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. And then she goes down into this trauma. The underworld, in the negativity of it, is trauma, the trauma space. And trauma is fracture. It's the fracturing. And then the healing from the underworld is, how do we reclaim our wholeness through that cohesion? And we need each other for that. That's co-regulation, which a lot of people are learning about the nervous system and healing trauma and the polyvagal theory. And it all happens through safe and social. That's Venus. It all happens through connection. And that can even happen with our animals, with our pets. We need each other. We need that level of care. And here's a beautiful painting about the reunion of Persephone with her mother, Demeter. And Hades looks like a pretty nice guy there, but I'm not sure I would paint him like that. So how is she captured? She's captured through narcissism, through her phone. And then she goes into the underworld. And the other thing, that this speaks to is it speaks to child trafficking. And so this is something that has just come out more and more, especially in this last couple years, that the level of child trafficking, which has increased 40% between 2016 and 2020, according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. It could be a lot more than that, but about 4.3 million children, probably higher, are trafficked, and 1 million are sex trafficked. And we had that story this last year that 200,000 children were missing from CPS in the United States. We know that children were missing in Maui. So what is happening to our children that are literally going into the underworld, both digitally through their phone and physically going missing. How do we create a golden age when this is going on?
We can't. I think it's so important that you're speaking to this because this is the number one problem in our world that we should all be focusing on.
Well, if we all were tuning in to this together, I think we could begin to find some solutions. Because, I'll be honest, when 2020 happened and there was all this coming about children and tunnels and children are being saved in tunnels and there was the whole Q movement. I've had a resonance of understanding about child trafficking for a long time. When I was a younger woman in my 20s, a book called The Bond Between Women by China Gallant. And it's about women who are working to end human trafficking all over the world. And she weaves these stories of these women. But I didn't understand that it's happening everywhere. So, according to Ali Carter, who's one of the Diddy survivors, and she's really been receiving more attention this last year, she's been speaking out. It's in every town, it's everywhere. Her whole thing is you don't live in the world that you think you live in. And
Yeah.
so, how do we see? How do we have the resource? How do we find that spot within us? Come home to ourselves, have that mother energy holding us so we have the strength, we have the resilience to see and to believe the survivors and to be discerning, but to believe the survivors with that deeper truth, because it's so unbelievable. And when the Q thing came out, and then the Q just seemed like other weird distraction psyop thing, it made me wonder, well, how much is this trafficking thing happening that they're talking about? So I will admit, even though I had that resonance, I kind of I lost the thread. And then this year I got introduced to Ali Carter and it changed everything. I feel like I had a whole recalibration of my understanding. And I was like, oh, she is the voice of the Venus and Aries cycle. She is the voice of the maiden who is calling out for the community to pay attention to the children, to find the children, to protect the children. And she is literally saying this. She's pouring out her heart, and she's been through absolute torture, unbelievable torture. It's a miracle that she's alive. She's 30 now, but we need to be able to go down, have the resources. This is what the heroine's journey will give you. It's not just about roses and hot dates. It will give you the power and the resilience to have your heart be so strong that you can look at the depths of hell and you can help the beings there. This is what the Buddhists call the bodhisattva. You're willing to go into the heart of hell to help.
My whole body is like getting lit up with chills as you're sharing this.
Yeah, it's like your biofield's resonating because Venus and Aries is coming in, and that mother energy is activating this protection of innocence. This myth is giving us a lot of clues. And this is the image that I made to embody what was feeling like it was coming through in 2025, and especially with this Venus and Aries cycle. It's that phoenix rising back into innocence, back into our own remembrance of our innocence before we were corrupted in whatever way we were, before we were harmed in whatever way we were. And there's a whole spectrum of that, but we've all had trauma. And so, how do we resonate with that innocence, and how do we come together in protection of innocence? If we put the protection of all children worldwide at the center of our quest to create a new paradigm culture, we will solve every single problem. Every single problem will be solved.
Yes, 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 yes to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to say one more thing about my history that I had thought to say earlier was that my whole life has been about how do we create regenerative culture. So I grew up in a very high-minded, spiritual community, intentional community, worldwide community that was trying to create regenerative culture. They didn't do a very good job. They did not focus on the children, but they were trying. So there was this humanitarianism, and there was all these ideas, and we have to be able to see the false care. There's a lot of bullshit encoded in the new age. Let's create a great new world. There's a lot of programming in there. And so I've been very blessed because I got to see all that early. I I really was steeped in this new age vision from a very early age. And so we need to have discernment. So there's a fierceness in that heart, in that love that I feel like the Venus and Aries cycle is really giving us too. So here's some resources that I'll share of heroines who I feel are very relevant for this time. One is named B. Schofield, and she is calls herself a cult reporter. She's done amazing articles for Guru magazine, and she's the author of Hunting Lucifer. Yes, all of those gurus that you are seeing in this image, she has done deep dive into their abuse. I am so sorry. It is time to wake up to the mind
Yes.
control of giving our power away to gurus. It's time. It's time to be warriors.
I feel like that
Warriors of
South
love.
Node going through Sagittarius a few years ago, it's like the age of the guru is dead.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. We need to stop putting people on pedestals because it's the celebrities and the gurus that are not holding the frequency of care. When we hold the frequency of care in our own body, we can tell if someone else is holding that frequency. And I spent 20 years so passionate and devoted in Tibetan Buddhist communities. And every single teacher that I had was abusive on some level. And I had a teacher that's in one of these pictures, emotionally abusive, sexually abusive. Every single teacher was not actually embodying what they were teaching and holding that frequency of care and protection of innocence. And so, through that brokenheartedness, through that wanting to have them be the savior, have them be the wise one, I got to get my own projections dismantled and take back my power in those ways. And I think this work's really important because there's so much mind control. So you might think cults are just some weird thing, but everything in this current dominator culture is very much about mind control. And there's a lot of cultic thinking. So it's good to be literate about cults and cult programming and brainwashing.
Even in
So
culture, right? Like,
culture, right? Exactly. So that we can resist it. And then there's beautiful Allie Carter. Oh my goodness. She shines and it is a miracle. And, she have alliesarmy.com. She has information there. She shares freely her story. You need to be resourced to hear what these children have gone through because it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable amount of suffering and torture. So be resourced. But this is what the heroine's journey gives us. It gives us the ability to presence that terror, that horror, and to stay regulated within ourselves. Because when we co-regulate, we help that one who's in trauma to thaw, to thaw the trauma, to thaw through that, to come back to the mother energy within themselves, to melt. I remember one time I did this um, beautiful week-long meditation with this Buddhist teacher. He had us sit with this ice that was in water, this ice cube that was in water. And now I understand why. This principle of thawing back to our true nature of love, our true nature of the mother is so important and it's so available to all of us.
wow, this is so powerful, Sasha. And I'm just what's really got the wheels on my mind turned. It's such a mechanical word. I don't even like it. It sounds so like tech. But what's really got me more inspired is, and I've really felt this since becoming a mother too, is like how to support the mothers to protect their children. Like,
Yeah.
oh, there's just so much on so many different avenues we can come together to ultimately support the children and protect the children of this earth so we can create this new age where children are safe and protected and their innocence is maintained through childhood like it should be.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was a single mom who is under attack from my partner, a very high conflict co parenting, then needing to protect my daughter too. What if we had a network of resources for those moms? Like, I'm available for that. Like, I've been through that initiation by fire, and I'm so calibrated to create the systems that will support her so she can protect her child because it is not easy. And that's how I became a heroine. I protected my daughter, maybe not in some ways, but in the most important ways. I protected my daughter in the face of a lot of harm. I mean, her grandfather was a pedophile. And so this was my journey. How do I protect this beautiful, precious, amazing being? And I did have success with that. I have that heart and I have that vision to help create a culture where that is at center. We're all focused on that for those mothers.
Oh, Sasha, this is so powerful. Thank you for bringing all of this. And just thank you so much also for having the courage to really like speak to the heart of what needs to be spoken to, because there's so much, right? There's everywhere about how can we redream a new world and rebirth a new reality. And it's like you cannot do that unless you're willing to go down to the underworld and hold space for like what's really happening. And, there's so few that have the courage to speak to this. So just thank you so much for speaking to that and bringing this here.
You're so welcome. It feels like I'm available for what this mother energy is asking from me. And this is what I'm here for. So it's not even about me anymore because I've really just decided to devote my life to this hard energy and what needs to happen. And it's going to be hard. I mean, I was the only parent in a high school of 2000 that was at the board meeting on Zoom because I wasn't allowed to be there in person because of my medical choices, who was advocating for them to take the masks off these kids. It's uncomfortable, and yet we have been trained now. We have been fortified and we're ready for the next level to support each other so that no one feels alone and that we feel like we have backup. We're creating a culture of care. We're providing mutual aid for each other, for the most vulnerable mother and child who needs it. She's not left out. She's absolutely at the center of what's being held for the culture. So yeah,
Mm.
most welcome. It's my pleasure. And it's been a very challenging path to get here. I won't lie. Scorpio Venus star and my Scorpio Venus. It's been a deep journey, and I feel so blessed to be able to share it, and I feel so much rose to the yes of being able to share it with you in particular and your audience. So yeah, I appreciate you, and I thank you for asking me to come and be a part of this. So this is the problem. This is the underworld right here on this slide. And then we need to also open to the solutions. And this beautiful woman came into my view on Facebook, and she's bringing in this mother frequency. So let's take a moment. Let's resource into her words. This is Mary Costello. We are coming to the very end of the false occupation of the mother principle, the relentless harvesting of her resources, and the desecration of her immaculate heart, the parasitic competition with her young, the abandonment and starvation of her, the conquering and management of her, always wanting access without reverence. In this energetic turning point, everything must be reclaimed by big hands, hands of deep compassion, hands that do not forsake anyone. Her hands. Financial abuse, abandonment, poverty, alienation, slander, invisibility. These are the wounds of the mothers of earth hold. The endless pull and projection from those who wish to own her, influence her by any means, enraged by her clarity, aligned to false frequency, resistant to the tone she keeps clear. Hold her up now, please, she who holds the world. Uphold her goodness, listen to her story, believe her, receive her, walk through the shame. She knows the way. Beloved mothers, they have persecuted you because you are to hold the highest office. So, this is a solution. We are the solution. All of us together creating this network of care to protect the children, to honor the mothers, and honor the mother principle within us. So, one last idea here as we talk about codes of life. I keep riffing on what are the codes of care? What does that mean? The flower of life that we all know is this model on the right that has 19 centers. We look at that as the flower of life. And these other numeric codes that are the crystal codes, and it has only one center. And I propose that if we make this one center the protection of the children, we will create a golden age. And I would love for those that geek out on numbers and coding and like how do we create a culture based on nature's principles to look into these codes. It's a lot harder to find out about the crystal spiral because we've been all told that the flower of life is the codes of creation. And I certainly don't want there to be 19 centers. I want this one center that is about the mother love. So these are my closing questions. Through this mother principle, we create a new paradigm culture. This is the golden age of Aquarius. So the question I ask all of you, and I welcome your answers, I welcome your thoughts, I welcome you to be in this conversation with me and each other, is how do we form these networks based on kindness with initiated men and women who adhere to the codes of care? How do we mobilize the majority to cultivate and protect innocence to stop the harm of children? We must be innocent to protect innocence. So we must cultivate that within ourselves. We must return to that within ourselves. And then how do we define the codes of care? And how could we program them into the incoming AI so that the AI abides by them? How do we do that? Where are the coders out there that know how to do that? Why is all of this AI being unleashed that has no stopgap around care, or not caring? How do we discern between authentic kindness and fake care, which is really embedded in a lot of the new age programming? There's a lot of spiritual bypassing. I just made a post on my Facebook about my process detoxing. I didn't even call it being sick, but I was down for 4 days. I had this big detox, and this new age vibe came in this comment about, like, why were you in dis-ease? What was going on with you that you created this sickness? And I'm like, no, no, thank you. Don't blame people for their underworld experiences, whether that's being sick for 4 days or having cancer. That is the old paradigm of shaming and putting yourself above and being holier than thou, new age people. No, no, thank you. I don't need that. We're all going to go through some things. And so let's really be humble, and let's really be earnest with connecting with each other and honoring each other in our goodness and taking each other at face value and believing those who have been harmed. When we put the end of abuse of all children worldwide at that center, we will solve all world problems. The return of the mother principle unites us in coherence. We leave no caring being out. We leave no caring being behind. I am putting together an offer, a 2-day intensive for women in business who want to understand their personal Venus design and then map out their 2025 with their business that is connected to their sacred purpose so that they have the resilience, especially midlife women. You are the mothers of the daughters. You are the ones who are the fresh elders, the new elders, and you're so needed. Your wisdom is so needed to work with midlife women and the identity crisis that happens as our beauty changes, as our body changes, and as we begin to cultivate this deeper grandmother energy and wisdom energy of our own medicine, and how to bring that with confidence. The Gen X generation is the last generation that remembers what it's like to be raised without technology. We didn't have any of it. And so we have very, very special codes to protect within ourselves, to remember within ourselves, and to pass on to the next generations. So the wisdom we have is really important. There's so much information, but that's not wisdom. So I want to say, the new elders, your lived wisdom is really important. Your emerging new beauty is gorgeous. And the initiation of menopause can just bring us deeper into our purpose and our sense of ourselves and what we're here to do. So yeah, people can just be in touch if they're interested in that kind of deep dive session with me. I'm excited to be sharing that.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Sasha. And we'll have your links like right below the video. And I think in the on the page as well that everyone can click on. Just thank you so much for bringing your wisdom, your heart, your courageousness. This was such an amazing, I don't want to say talk that doesn't even like do it justice. Such an amazing offer.
Journey.
Yeah, a gift
Not a
that
journey.
yeah, a journey. Yes, a journey that you've brought through to us. So thank you so much, Sasha. And yeah, any last words of that you want to share on, and just anything on the any guidance on the astrology of 2025?
Just that, in this next cycle, it's an Aries cycle, which is connected to Mars. We get to redefine that life force energy. And it's one of the last Venus and Aries cycles. we're really changing frequency when we go into that underworld place. When Venus is behind the sun, there'll be a second meeting of Venus and the sun when she's not retrograde and closest. And that's going to be in Capricorn, the energy of Capricorn, and really fortify this reclaiming of that grandmother wisdom, that power of manifestation. And then the next cycle coming is Scorpio. After this Venus and Aries cycle, the next cycle coming is Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, which is Mars' feminine sign. And that is also ending. So the two Venus cycles that are headed by Mars are ending. And we're having an income of increased feminine energy. So we're going to have the next cycle after the Venus in Scorpio cycle ends is Venus in Libra, which we had a preview of in October of 2022 when she was in the underworld. But that's going to be coming on as a full cycle, which is Venus's sign. So the return of the feminine principle is coming. Take heart. Justice is coming, and peace will happen through justice and through the way that the feminine has been harmed being repaired. We don't need to be in anger, but we need to be in truth about that, and we can work together to harmonize, to create the new paradigm that we're all wanting to live in.
Beautiful, Sasha. Thank you.
And Jamie, you're so beautiful. So great to be with you.
You as well. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. And, definitely feel free to share anything that's moving through for you and the comments on this video. We'd love to hear. And we'll see you in other talks. Bye for now, everyone.